that's how teachers are so important, like what they say when they're speaking into your child's
Yeah.
life. In my head, I've heard slow down.
Okay.
No, that's a real thing, you know, because sometimes if you don't slow down, you miss a lot of things. I've worked with all levels of people, famous people or people serious in industry, and there's one common denominator amongst all people: the overthinking. Sometimes not thinking that they're not, at times battling, not thinking they're good enough.
Welcome to A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. This is my passion project to interview interesting people about their lives. And today we're super lucky to have with us Lydia Amoah. Now, Lydia is the CEO of BACKLIGHT. She's also the founder of the Black Pound Report, and I'm sure we will talk about what drove her to do that report. She's a business coach and a mentor, and she's had a really interesting personal journey, which I know she'll tell us about, which has where she's had to have lots of resilience and real determination to get to where she is. Lydia, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to hear your story today.
It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Brilliant. So, first question I want to ask you is a very broad one. Just can you tell me a little bit about your journey into adulthood?
Yeah, I can. Well, where do I begin? That's such a big question. So, when I think about it, my parents came from, they migrated to the UK. I'm from Ghana. I was the first sibling out of my, out of the family to be born in the United Kingdom. So I think that always posed something of a uniqueness I felt in the way that I viewed the world, and also looking at the way my siblings viewed the world, because they were born in Ghana, I was born in the UK. So within the household, there were different accents around the house. So I was the only one in there with the London accent. It was like, that was quite something within itself. And then going to school, and the differences of cultures all merging together. I noticed that at a very early age of my life. So I think that definitely had an imprint on my mind, without a doubt. And my mum was somebody that always drilled in us to work very hard for everything. So that was already a given. I felt like a child, but I also felt I had responsibilities on my shoulder from quite a young age, if that makes sense. So I was like dual in the way of my approach to life. And I think actually that's always been a theme that's led me to my current day. And yeah, I'd say that when I was just before my 7th birthday, my father passed away, and that actually was tough on
Yeah.
everybody. On my mum, 4 children to raise in the UK,
On her own.
where everybody spoke English, but it's everybody's second language. My first language, everybody else's second language, and thrive in an environment doing your very best to thrive in an environment where initially it wasn't the family where everybody was born. It takes a lot to get used to the environment, to be yourself, to learn how do you maneuver all of that. So I would say the gift of that to me now as an adult, it taught me how to maneuver in different spaces with different people, different cultures, different backgrounds. I won't say you culturally switch, but sometimes you might feel like you're culturally switching, because you'll be 1 minute I'll be in an environment where I'm surrounded by predominantly white people, and then I'll be in an environment when I come home, it's my family, and you don't realise it at the time, but there's a lot of I don't want to call it code switching, because code switching happens a bit later on down the line, but there's a little bit of changing one's approach to communication and everything like that. Still feeling free, but just noticing something feels a bit different, but you don't quite know what it is. So I think now I'd say that's been my gift.
And that's quite a skill to learn at such an early age, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's such a skill to learn, because you'll be in different social settings. So if I'm in a social setting with my friends, I grew up in Fulham, that's southwest London. So that area, yes, there were different cultures there, but definitely I would say probably 60% were white, 40% a mixture of African, Caribbean, Irish, Asian, and then the rest, whatever you describe, is supposed to be English living in the area. But my school was very culturally diverse. I'd say my school was very mixed, but my class was. So all of these things you pick up. But if I think about school life, just mentioning school, I remember that's the first time, well, not the first time, but the first time it really made an impact on me. The types of projections that were put upon me from teachers. Yeah. So when I think about it, everyone used to say out of all my friends, I used to be the one who has one of the craziest sense of humours, but at the same time, parallel, very deep thinker. You know, so I would either be sitting there really deep in thought, thinking some things I don't quite understand what's happening around here. The other part, just a good sense of humour and everything else. And I think that was also a gift that got me through a lot of things, got me through a lot of
Yeah, I
situations.
bet.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, growing up in Southwest London, I'm a Southwest
Yes.
London girl as well. So
Are
I
you?
as well went to a very, very diverse school.
Yeah.
What from schooling into adulthood. So how
Yeah.
did you get from growing up in with a single parent household effectively
Yeah.
from the age of
Basically, what? Yeah.
7 with
Yeah.
3 siblings to being the CEO of BACKLIGHT?
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that journey.
Oh, that's a big question. That's a big question. Wow. So I have to. What we've got for the time I've got. I'm thinking in taking this in pieces. Taking this in stages of life. So growing up in Fulham, and I did have a nanny as well because my mum and dad were working so hard to make sure that get all the family together and so on and so forth. So, for a few years of my life, I was living in Bournemouth. Do you believe that? I was living in Bournemouth. Yeah. That I had a nanny there and everything else like that. And then eventually came back to, Fulham and all of that. So all of these things, they say from 0 to 7 is when it has the biggest impact on a child. The child might not communicate it, but the child is taking it all in and everything else like that. And would you believe it? One of the things I will share, which my friends laugh at, I didn't start speaking till about 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah. But then my mum said to me, she was taking me to the doctors thinking, what sort of child? My mum was so direct. She just said, what is this child I've got here? And they said, don't worry. This child, she observes everything. When she's good and ready, she will begin. And my mum said, bless her, she's passed now, but she would say that once you began, you never stopped. We should have been so
You made
grateful
up
for
for
those.
it.
Yeah, you made up for it. We should have been so grateful for those quiet years because, geez, when you began, you began. That was quite something. But one of the things I noticed in growing up was just noticing, spotting differences around me and everything else like that. School's obviously important for most people. Some people have a great experience at school. I did enjoy going to school, and I remember really being excited about English, and I always used to write stories, and that was where my creative side came out. And one of my teachers, I looked up to this teacher. I adored this teacher because you'd get little exercises and I'd bring them in. I used to like writing poetry and all. I still do like writing poetry and all those things. And he said to me, Lydia, you're just not academic. And I said, I was like, pardon? I was like, what? I can't fall. You have just fallen off that shelf.
Yeah.
Literally. You've just literally fallen off that shelf. And that, because it's somebody in authority, it's a teacher speaking over your life. That's how teachers are so important, like what they say when they're speaking into your child's
Yeah.
life. And I remember that gave me a bit of a ouch, like, what does that mean? What if with using the English language and the English teacher that he had a challenge in expressing, Lydia, what it is, you are a creative,
Yeah.
and this is what I see in you. He didn't have the power to communicate, although someone gave him that job to be an English teacher. So the fault was really on his side. But these are the things, because words and how you
They
communicate are
form you, yeah.
powerful, and they form you and shape you. And I'd had experiences, where at the age of 13, 14, I'd had a situation where, talking about a situation that stands out, that reminds me of like why I probably ended up doing the Black Pound report. Me and my friends were coming back from a group, one of the community groups we were part of, and we were laughing. Really, I was laughing. My laugh was the loudest, and this man just came up to me, and do you know what he did, Sam? He just spat in my face and called me the N word, and I
Oh my
just
God.
remember, yeah, I remember just being shook
Yeah.
from the inside out. And I was thinking, and I remember going to my school, speaking to my teachers, and they said, what can we do about it? I said, I'll describe him to you. Do something about it. this is not on. And I was really like fighting for my own rights at 13, 14. Most children may have left that, but I was not having it, because it shook me. And because it shook me, I needed to do something about it so I could come back to myself. So these are things that I remember. I remember saying to my teacher, look, I want to be a counsellor. Why did I want to be a counsellor? I've been through quite a lot of stuff already by the age of 7. And I was both a deep person that observed my circumstances, my environment, and at the same time had a jovial nature with my, which is my personality character. But they said to me, you'll probably end up pregnant, smoking cigarettes or drinking. And I remember thinking, and this all happened at around the age between 13 and 14, and they're very important years.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, that felt like a gut punch. But I thought, that's definitely, and I remember thinking, that's definitely not going to be me,
Yeah.
And I don't know where that character came from. God must have given it to me, but that nature of, even though I felt a few gut punches in my life, there's always the bounce back that won't keep me where you think it's going to keep me. So I thank God that I've got that nature about
Yeah.
about me, And then when I went to college, I did a business course, and I did have a good teacher there. His name was Mr. Mongi. I don't know if he's still alive now, but he said to me, you're very much like an entrepreneur, because before the teacher's even finished speaking, you're putting your point across, you're shaping the class. You're supposed to be sitting back in the class. You're not the teacher, Lydia, but this is what I can see you doing. And I know that he really liked me. When you know a teacher is there to support you. And
Yeah.
he was probably one of the first teachers that saw me, and saw my skill and ability, and worked with me with my skills and ability. And that was really, really good. So these are the things that I was able to do. And I remember there's a group of our friends that we said, we wanted to do something like organise a fashion show, and we put all this idea together. And I remember we organised this fashion show. We got the mayor of Wimbledon to come along. We went around to all the big department stores. They actually they gave us their clothes. They just said, what insurance have you got? They said, what insurance have you got? I just literally typed something up. I said, look, this is going to do just this is going to assure you that you're going to get your clothes, you will get your clothes back. Come down, set up a stall, sell your clothes. I was literally just, and
Hustling.
and
I like it.
I was hustling. And they said, okay. And I was like, girls, they said, okay, right. So we got with designers from Camden. It was called Miss Selfridge at the time, no longer around. Miss Selfridge, all these people, they all came to, and it was a fantastic event. And I feel that was showing me that, Lydia, you're an entrepreneur. I didn't have a mentor or anybody to guide me in that particular way. So it was a bit much of seeking, finding, failing, seeking. I've had so many ideas that I used to bring home to my mum and say, I've got this idea, I've got a really good, I've got another really, and she'd be like, oh, look, okay. And then I'll do it really well. Okay, well, that one's finished now, mum, I'm on to the next one. So I try, and I imagine if I had somebody, Sam, to really sit me down, when I see some opportunities that are available now, it's fantastic. And also, and it's available to us at any age. It's not about, I'm just talking about you're coming through your younger years, to have somebody to help soundboard with you, shape you, say, look, this is what I see in you. Like what I do for the people that I coach. And that's why I love, that's one of the things I love doing is coaching, because it's almost like I'm giving back to the ways that I wish that I had someone there for me in that particular way, because I want someone can bypass. I mean, I love the life that I've had, don't get me wrong, but bypass some of those moments so they could maybe accelerate a bit faster. That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you went into business at college.
Yeah, I did business. I went to business.
Did you go straight into being an entrepreneur?
Well, what I did is I remember there was somebody I was sort of seeing at the time, but he was incredibly good at sales. So he would say to me, before you go to interview, he would train me and sit me down. And I remember one day he trained me so much, I actually broke out in a sweat. Can you imagine? This is like, I was about 20 years old, like, sweating. But I'll never forget that experience, because he taught me that when you go for an interview, you are going for the job, of course, but you're interviewing them as well. You've got just the right to interview them. Do they actually deserve to have you there as well? So when I'd go for interviews, so after left college, the Work Foundation, it used to be called the Industrial Society. They were a training organisation. Again, a great job to begin with because they trained me so much. And I remember when I went to the interview, they were asking me questions, and I just said, well, who was in the job before me? You know, what was the type of development they had? Why are they no longer working here? You know, and I remember them looking at me thinking, this is quite a question to be asking, you know. And, you know, and I got the role, and my mum at the time was like, go be a PA. I'm like, Mum, me, a PA? I just don't think it's going to work. It's not going to work, because she wanted me to be steady. And I understand why she wanted me to be that, you know, to go down that avenue, to have to be safe, to have make sure I've got consistent money coming in. And she didn't want anything else for me other than that, financial, she would call it financial freedom, stability. I understand that. But I did try, Sam, and I'll be leaving out paragraphs left, right, and centre. Because mine would just be saying off somewhere else.
Or looking at the boss and going, I can do your job.
Yeah, exactly. Thinking, what else can I be doing? You know, what's happening here? Like, you know, you're not good at that. And then I remember they put me on the phone to speak to somebody, and I just literally, they just said they just committed to the call. They committed to you know, to the training workshops that I was selling. And she said, you're not great at this, but you are really good with people. You're really, really good at people. You build straight connections with people, and you know how to sell to people. You know, you listen to a need and you'll give them what they need. And that's, I think, was the beginning of me beginning to figure out, like, what's my strengths, what's my greatness. Does that make sense? Because I think when you're in your 20s, that's what you're doing. You're trying to figure out, you've got all these different skills. What's a hobby? What's actually a career? Especially when you know that I knew that I was definitely going to go down my working for myself route. So I had a combination of different roles, but every time I was in a position where I was working for a business, I would always give my best, but there's something inside of me just said you need to be doing something for yourself. But I just needed to know what that would, what, you know, what role that was going to be. So I've had quite a few different avenues of when it comes to running my own business, which is a good thing, because it all actually feeds into being good at what you do in business. Many
Yeah.
different hats to wear.
Yeah. And I think clearly that early determination of what was right and wrong and
Yes.
what you wanted to do and the hustle, that's
Yeah.
clearly never left you.
No, it hasn't.
Is
It
that fair to
hasn't
say?
left me. It's fair to say. It hasn't left me. It hasn't.
So tell me a little about what inspired you to create the Black Pound Report.
Yeah. Well, that's just what I mentioned to you. You saw some of the things that I went through. There was not enough time to go through everything, because this would really be hours long. But there's different things of people. I saw patterns. I'm a bit of a pattern observer. And I just saw that people would have their ideas about who they thought I was as a black woman, as a young woman, you know, London accent, who am I? Don't quite know what box to kind of like put me in, essentially. And all of that, everything to do with identity, culture, background, status, demographic, all of that, all fed into and led up to that moment when I walked into a department store, and with a colleague of mine. She was English, and she had 100% of the shelf when it came to buying makeup. And when I inquired that, what is it? What do you have for me? The lady responded, I was 21 years old, and she said, we only, 21, 22, we only stock colours for normal skin tones.
Oh my God.
Yes. And it's only by the grace of God I think I was removed from that shop. I was removed from that. Because the South London girl was like, what is this? What do you mean? I thought, and here comes another one. Here comes another one saying this to me. And I remember leaving that store and saying, there has got to be a day that you and I can walk into a department store and I don't get told that, listen, send your money to the States or to Ghana or go to a predominantly black area to buy what you need. You know, I have the right to have a percentage off that shelf just as much as anybody else. So these were the seeds that were planted But I'm really glad that woman said that, because I don't know, would I be doing, I might be doing something to do with this right now, but I feel that really planted a seed in me, really. And that was one of the things that was always with me, like, one day, what can I do about this? And that marked my trajectory. So when I went to work in business, I'd look, who's at the top? Does anybody at the top look like me? Can I see a CEO? I'd see some people in leadership, but I didn't see a CEO looking like me in the roles that I was in, the decision makers to influence the way the business would go. I remember working for a company, and every time it came to the boardroom, it was almost like, you bring the idea, you bring how much money you've made for us to the boardroom, but after that, it's like, shut the door. You don't come in and sit at the table. And these were all the things that said to me, you need to be working for yourself, Lydia. Now, you need to be your own boss. Do that. So eventually, one day, I was reading one of these books. I'm always thinking about how I can do better. It was Think and Grow Rich, a Black choice, written by Dr. Kimbrough, who is now my mentor. I was reading that book, and I was also watching a movie. And I said, you know what? This man is speaking about, ask for what you want, go for it. So I wrote him an email after watching the film that weekend, and I said, look, you don't know me, but in the movie, you said ask for these things, and I'm asking you to be my mentor. I'm asking you to help me, and I won't give up connecting with you until you. He's just like, this girl, who is this girl? and till today, he's from Atlanta. And he's interviewed people like Tyler Perry, Oprah, Essence Magazine, all the people, all the greats, what makes a great great, and all of this stuff. And for the first time, I met him a few weeks ago when he flew to London eventually, after all this time of him being my mentor since I started the Black Pound Report. And I remember watching that movie thinking, I need to actually do something to teach, not that I know everything, but use the knowledge that I have and the knowledge of the people that have taught me, to make sure that we have a greater understanding about financial literacy. I'm still learning, by the way. Every time I'm still growing. Thinking, gosh. And then I just went with this idea, full throttle, self-funded it, everything, no investment. That was the first Black Pound Report in 2018 when that was launched. And I really believed in it. Like, when you just believe in something, you just don't know why you believe in it, but you just believe in it so much. And then it exploded. And it was giving a voice to Black, Asian, people that are underserved, underrepresented. They're great people. And I know that money speaks the loudest. It does. It's right up there with oxygen, okay? Oxygen, money, we need them both. It's what we can do great change when we've got the finances to be able to help people. It opens many, many doors, creates many opportunities. But if you don't have the opportunity, it becomes a bit tough. So the Black Pound Report, it was birthed in 2018. Since then, it's gone on to be a partner with people like the Times, who have articles like the Times, Sunday Times, Talk Sport, The Sun, Rupert Murdoch's business, basically. So to go from that little girl in Fulham whose teacher told her that, look, you're not going to amount to much, and I could have taken on that belief. I'm not saying there wasn't times when I would challenge myself, because those words would come up in my mind.
Yeah.
They would come up.
Talking about those kind of challenging times,
Yeah.
have you had a time where you've because you've obviously been really successful, you're clearly very determined. You strike me as someone, and I'm a bit like this. If you tell me I can't do it, it's like the red rag.
Exactly.
But there must have been times where you've had to face failure.
Oh yeah, definitely. You can't be a success without failing. And it's only actually really now that I speak about it more. And I think, because if you just hear people's success stories, that's fantastic to hear, but you have to learn how people have overcome things, because everybody has those down days and gets worried. Everyone has their down days, and I've had them as well, and you get them,
Yeah.
And there's been times when there was a pitch that I didn't win, and it's like in business development. If you don't win that pitch, it's almost like you're the most celebrated person in the room when you win the deal. And then when you don't, it's almost like, out. disrupted, then that's when you have to get a grip on who you are, because if anybody's ever, which most people have experienced, somebody saying something negative towards you, then it's the mind, because the mind is the most powerful tool on the universe, in the universe, sorry. So it's like the words that your mind will tell you, you're not that good, come on, you you try to believe in yourself, but when that teacher said that thing, I think the teacher was right, and it's how to overcome those moments. Or when you're in rooms and you're pitching and I actually wrote a post about it earlier today because it was in me, because I felt that emotion, because when I'm seeking, say, investors or partners for the work that I do, and I believe it's so important, and it's not just me, a lot of people believe it's important, but still, nobody's an island, and you need people on your side to help you take it to the next level. And sometimes, Sam, when you're in a room and you're deciphering, what's that extra eyebrow movement mean, or what does that, when
Yeah.
somebody goes like that mean, all of those things, because you become, you can become very over analytical, the spaces that you're in, and that means you're getting a bit tired. So you have to know the signals of when to stop and just say, do you know what? Because entrepreneurs, there's no day off. Even when you have days off, the brain is thinking, because it's your business. It's not even your baby, because the Black Pound report is actually, it's a force all by itself. It's actually, I'm literally try to manage it, and I cannot do that because it's so big and it's so huge. But yeah, we've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes, and I think, I wish I knew better at that time, or I wish I had, when I was growing up, thinking, I wish I had that mentor to shape me. Like, I would have achieved these things sooner. But then, would I be the person that I am today? Probably not. And or you might do something. I might say, share something or share an idea. I'm not too sure if most people, I think a lot of people may have experienced this. You share an idea with someone, and sometimes they take that idea and they run with it, and you're thinking, so you have to be really smart in business, because there are a lot of really good supportive people around us that will be on our side, but then not everybody's for us as well, in business. And I don't know if you call that mistakes or you can call it a failure, but I call it more like learnings at the end of the day. And I have to remind myself to be kind to myself, in the sense of, if things don't always go the way that I want them to go, if I feel like I've got that assurance that this thing's going to happen and it doesn't, or it's been delayed, or it's taken another route, that can feel really disappointing, because when you run your own business, you're not always sure where the next round of income is coming in from. So this is not for everybody. Sometimes I think to myself, some of my friends, I couldn't do what you do, because they've got roles, and I respect what they do. And I say, at the same time, I don't know if I could do what you do either.
So many of my friends who are entrepreneurs have said to me they are
Yeah.
completely unemployable
Yeah.
by somebody else.
Do you know, one of my friends at Dharma said to me, Lydia, you're totally unemployable. I said, pardon? And then she just said, no, don't take it in the wrong way.
That's a compliment.
That's a compliment. Some days I wish I was more employable, because the hustle is real. It is really
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
It really is. It's tough, because every day you have to be switched on, Sam.
Yeah.
Every day you've got to bring the energy. You have to have innovation, creation, good people skills, PR skills, and I know that. Okay, I'm good at those areas. I've worked to be good at those areas, but I'm still learning. I can still learn from someone younger than me. Or it doesn't matter. It's not even about age. You can learn from most good people around you.
I think that's really powerful, that kind of learning, that continual learning, but also what you said
Yes.
before about knowing when you haven't got that energy, and learning that although you feel like you have to always be on, you do kind of have to look
Yeah.
after yourself as well.
Definitely. Yeah.
Um, so,
Definitely.
so in your life, especially as an entrepreneur, you obviously have to make lots of decisions.
Oh yeah.
What's the best decision you've ever made?
Do you know what? The best decision I made was deciding to work for myself. That was one of the best decisions, because I did try so much to work within the office environment. And I always used to say, I used to feel like an animal, a lion in a cage or something, like, get me out of here. I learned some great skills when I worked for other people, don't get me wrong. But actually, in saying that, one of the best decisions, I believe, I know that it was two things. Number one, when I had counselling, yeah, and
Okay.
number two, when I had coaching.
So that
Those
kind
two
of learning
things.
about yourself, back to that
Yeah.
continual learning.
Yeah, definitely. I love learning. Always love to learn. I'm hungry for learning new
Yeah.
things. But I would say that the coaching, it was almost as though I'd cut off. I don't want to say the word change. That sounds a bit deeper than that. But I just felt like I'd loosened elements
Yeah.
of the past that were no longer part of me, and it really shaped me. But I'd say that after coaching and therapy is really good. Things I understand, actually, the impact of my father passing away when I was young, it did have an impact on
Of
me.
course.
Oh my gosh, being told all these things, that labels that were said, a bit of bullying, all these types of things. Talk through it, because it's what shapes who you are. Without you realizing, without me realizing, these experiences had actually, at times, would show up, and I wouldn't be in my best self. And then the coaching was equally as emotional, because I remember crying at both. I was thinking, I thought the tears were over. But when because the coach was like, okay, but some of it I've realised it's me that's holding myself back. It's me that's holding myself back. Why am I holding myself back? Because even though I'd had the coaching and sorry, the counselling and everything else like that, it's like getting rid of the residue, if that makes sense. A little droplets that are there, and then it's almost like you're rebirthing yourself to start. Okay, well, I want to bring the best of me forward, and then when I did that, that's when I became like a lioness. My one of my first coaches, her name was Ushma Patel. I've got to give her props. She and I remember I said to her, "Am I supposed to be crying this much?" And she just said, Actually, you're just letting go." I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay," because I feel like I'm crying a lot,
Yeah.
And then she would help me shape it differently and look at things differently. And then I would go. I felt as though that some of that spirit of what I was like in my 20s came back. That pushing through. So I spoke to. I said, "Listen, this is what I want to do. So and so is not. If so and so can have this opportunity, why not me? What's happening? I want to go. Send me to Switzerland. Send me on this event. Let's see how I do. If I don't do great, then let's talk about it." And in the end, they said yes. And then everyone said, "Lydia, how have you gone from being this coordinator, now you're flying here, there, and everywhere? You're doing all this. You're doing all these things." It was because I invested in myself, and that person, and because everyone has those negative thoughts. The most. I've worked with all levels of people, famous people or people serious in industry, and there's one common denominator amongst all people: the overthinking. Sometimes not thinking that they're not, at times battling, not thinking they're good enough, and needing a mirror to say, this is actually who you are.
Yeah.
I'm helping you to see who you are. So to have someone help me see who I was like, okay, is that really me? Is that me? Then I'm going for it. And we all need that. Because look at the struggles that happen out there, Sal. We need that someone else to show us a mirror of who we are. Remove this part that's not serving you, but this stuff is. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's life. That's continuous. That's
Yeah, I
continuous.
think that's so powerful. And like you, I've had both fantastic coaching and therapy and cried a lot.
Yes,
And it's so
yes,
powerful. I think we should be
yes.
much more honest about the fact that actually crying's really good for you. Like
Yeah, honestly, I'm a
it
crier.
releases endorphins. It's actually
It
incredibly good
does.
for you. And actually, I'm recording in a couple of weeks a woman who is an amazing business coach and has also just written a report on imposter syndrome.
Really? Okay.
And
Oh, yeah.
talking about that, everybody's a bit worried in the
Yes.
back of their head they're not
Of
good enough.
course.
Yeah, it's
Sam,
normal.
of course it's normal. Can you imagine? Oh gosh, I mean, I
But
don't know if
the
there's
key
time.
is to not let it hold you back.
No, yeah,
So,
that's the thing.
so I'm going to take you back to your 18-year-old self.
All right.
So, what would she recognise in the Lydia of today?
Wow. The 18-year-old me, as much as she was boisterous and everything else, there was self-doubt there. So she would say to me now, "Girl, you've done good." you know, she'd say to me, "I'm really, really proud of you. And I would say back to her, "Well, thank you as well, so much." Because even with all that was going on, we still pushed. When we felt that imposter syndrome, we still pushed. When we felt that we just didn't know what was happening or what we should be doing with our lives, you still pushed. So I often do that thing. I've learned that from therapy as well. Look back at your younger self, because both are equally as important. And I think that when we can look back at and I would turn around and say, oh, so actually she's supposed to what she's saying to me, but I would turn around and say to her, thank you so much. And
I love that.
yeah, I would say thank you so much,
Because if
because
she hadn't been her, you wouldn't be you.
yeah, I mean, if I think about it, Sam, I, I I don't know where I thought I was going to end up. I didn't know I'd end up having this type of impact. I just didn't. Honestly, I promise you, I just did not know. And I fought so many. It's almost as like I felt like a Serena Williams with the tennis, like batting off all these things that people would say. She talks too much, or she's too creative, or she's what do I do, or she's not good enough, or she's whatever. All of that, and that's a lot mentally to push through, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And my 18-year-old self and my younger self, and before that, got me through all of that. And obviously, I will have to turn around and say, I have got faith in God. Okay, I do have faith. I'm not ministering to anybody, but I'm just letting people know that I always had that faith. My mum introduced me to that at a very young age, and so I remember I've been in situations. I mean, I still do it now. Always praying. If you ask anybody I know, even in industry, I say, if you want something to pray about, because I feel there's real power in that. There's real power, because if we just rely on ourselves, of course we've got our family and our friends and our therapists and our coaches and all of that. But there's that time at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, when you've got tears raising up inside of you and you might be feeling a bit anxious. I felt a bit anxious, what's going on? Or, oh gosh, those moments still can be within me at times, with the Black Pan report, when I'm seeking more people to take it to the next level, and so
Yeah.
on and so
Yeah.
forth, and I'm just praying, and then the next minute I get up or I go and do my sports. I've got these things. I do my battle ropes, so I've got these battle ropes. I even do it in my neighbourhood. I think they look at me as they say, okay. I've got these battle ropes, going off with them, but it's like release, because it's like we have this spirit, this energy that moves through us, and some of it can be dark, negative energy, because we might be overdoing it, doing too much, pleasing too many people. As women, we're wives, we're sisters, we're aunties, we're everything. We're everything, aren't we? We play so many different
Yeah.
roles, so we have to make sure. I have to make sure, we have to make sure we're taking time to take care of ourselves. And you have to recognise the symptoms. It might be a headache. You might be getting a severe headache. You might be really irritable. Someone said pass the salt and you just want to slap them or something.
That's definitely a sign. And what I'm not sure, it's definitely a sign.
It's definitely a sign. Someone just said, can you please pass the salt? And you're like, all of you. This is real. We have to know how to really take care of ourselves, because we give out so much energy. I'd never not do what I'm doing. Sometimes the mind thinks, oh gosh, should you stop doing something a bit more stable? But I don't think I was born for that.
No, I think I'd probably agree with that, definitely.
Yeah.
So we've talked about kind of decision making and the past and stuff. And one of the things I'm always really interested in is advice. So, you've had therapy and coaching, and you're a mentor and a coach yourself. So we all love giving advice. All of us are not great at taking advice, but we all love giving it. What's the best piece of advice that you've been given but that you ignored?
In my head, I've heard slow down.
Okay.
No, that's a real thing, because sometimes if you don't slow down, you miss a lot of things.
Yeah, that's
You
a really
really
good point.
do. You really do miss a lot of things, and because if you're going like 10 for the dozen, going forward, you could have your blessing right underneath your nose, but you're just not seeing it, because you just keep going, not acknowledging really it's right that it's there. Another one is, well, I think my mum always used to say to me, you just don't know who you are. And I'd be like, tell me that. And she goes, no, that's something you have to find out for yourself. So thanks a lot.
Oh, I
You don't know
love that. That's really powerful, though.
Yeah.
Because she's
I
right,
always
right?
think
Because
that.
you have to work it out for yourself. But gosh,
Yes.
all of us would have hated being told that when we were younger.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
That's what she said to me. And it's something that always stays with me. And, when you're preparing for something really important, whether it's an interview or facing, I don't know, a doctor said something about your health, whatever it is, You have to have a sense of self and know who you are, so so it can take you through those situations.
Yeah.
You know, and I would say about it sounds corny. I think most people say it, but it is important to believe in yourself. I've been told that many a times when I was younger. Believe in yourself. Even now, if my friends see me doubting, is this going to happen or blah blah blah, and then it's those types of things, and it's the simple things to take hold of that will take you so much further.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I don't think I've laughed so much in a podcast so far. This has been so much fun, Lydia. So this is the question I ask everyone. So I don't know how we've managed to get to the last question because this has been so
Wow.
much fun. I've really enjoyed your story.
Thank you.
But obviously it's called A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up.
Oh
So
wow.
if you could put one thing out of all the things you've learned in your lifetime into a beginner's guide, what would you
Oh,
put in there?
get to know yourself. Get to know yourself big time. Understand, identify your superpowers, I'd like to call it, and recognize where your weaknesses are. Work on your weaknesses and, shine and rise through the strengths that you have. I think that's so important because when you get a sense of self, I think there's not anything there's not anything you cannot do when you come to know yourself. And those words my mum said to me is, you don't know yourself, you don't know who you are. When we know who we are, the sooner we get on discovery of that journey, I think life can be really amazing. It doesn't mean you won't have challenges. Doesn't mean you won't go through the normal things that we go through in life. Bereavement, all these, imposter syndrome, and all of these things. But when you have a sense of self, you know what coming home feels like.
I think that's so powerful, and I think you're so right. Which is if you know where to come back to at your core,
Yeah,
whatever that is, that's a place
exactly.
of comfort, right? So no matter how life
Completely.
is hard around you and how many times
Yeah,
you fail, if you
yeah.
know who you are, you've got that at your core, and that gives you a superpower. That gives you a strength.
Definitely. Definitely, because you can stand in yourself. You might have to go to a networking event and you might not feel all switched on. I want to be talking to people, this, that, and the other. If you know yourself, it's okay to sit back and just be in yourself and just be quiet and listen. But some people can feel, I felt that place. Have you ever been to networking? Oh, network and
You
do
like
that
deep
face.
breath before you walk
Yeah,
in. You're like,
yeah,
right,
exactly.
here we go.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. And someone's asked you what you do, but because you so don't want to be there, that was really rubbish. I don't know. I can't believe I really undersold myself there. But when you just got a sense of self, you can just be peaceful in yourself. And certain things you don't worry about anymore. Worrying about what people think of you,
Yeah,
all of these things, because women, we can really worry about
yeah,
men do as well, but I think
yeah,
especially amongst women we can worry a lot about what people think of us, from what we're wearing to how we speak to how far we've got in society, or who we're supposed to be as women, what we're supposed to have achieved, all these different things. So there's
yeah,
there's so much to combat with. I think the best thing I'm always still growing in is and loving is having a sense of self-love for myself, and being comfortable and confident in who I am, regardless of if I feel that whether I've got all the things I wished I'd achieved by now, or
yeah,
all of this. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Because
No,
sometimes you
it
can be a bit
does.
hard on
Yeah,
yourself. Yeah,
and
giving
it
your
just
capacity.
it frees up such headspace, right,
Yeah,
for you
definitely.
to
Oh,
then overthink all
definitely.
the entrepreneurial stuff.
Definitely, exactly. Honestly, a sense of self is one of the best things to have. Be grounded in yourself. Stand. Be happy with yourself. You want to be on your own for a bit. Quiet time to be comfortable with yourself.
Yeah,
I remember the other day I had a date with myself and I wrote down all my stuff, and I actually, honestly, it make you laugh, but I mean it. People should do it out there. I went up to her and said, "You're not bad, girl. You're not bad. I like you. You've done a
yeah,
lot. You should be proud of yourself. And it's not just about achievements, but it's like the impact you've made in your family, to those around you, and and what we've taken ourselves through.
yeah,
Because everyone behind that beautiful smile, behind whatever everyone's wearing, everyone's had their struggle. You just don't know what
yeah,
people have struggled with in their
yeah,
lives. But they're still getting up and going out and doing things and making a difference, however small, however big. That's amazing. I think the
yeah,
best thing in this life is to leave a mark on this world, to know that you've done something that worthwhile.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And you've
Yeah.
set our listeners a challenge as well to go on a date with
Yes.
themselves, which I love. We
Yeah, go
might
on a
have to bring
date.
that in as an extra part of the podcast that people have to
Yeah,
go
you have
off
to
and
go
take
on a
some
date
action
with
off the
yourself.
back of it. Brilliant.
Go on a date. Honestly, it's the best thing. I loved it when I did. I was like, whoa, this is good. It's such a good feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Lydia, thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time today. I've learned
Thank
so much
you.
about you, and it's been such a fascinating listen to you and your journey and what you've learned and the wisdom and advice that you've shared with our listeners. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for your time.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown Up. If you enjoyed it, please like, follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If there's someone who inspires you that you'd like me to interview, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram and TikTok. In the meantime, enjoy being a grown up.